Hey, I'm Marv. And what most of you know is that I play Roblox. And what some of you know is that I also play Fantastic Frontier, which is a game with a lot of unique content and cool looking enemies. And because of that, I want to put my art skills to the test and draw a few of them. But there is one problem when it comes to trying to draw these guys. The majority of the enemies were made in 2018 and made for the Roblox medium, so it's kind of hard to translate that into an actual 2D drawing. But nonetheless, I think I actually did a pretty decent job. But anyway, enough of the intro, let's go. The first drawing that I'm going to be doing is going to be the blackrock giant. Since personally I think it has one of the cool designs compared to the rest of the giants in the game. Although drawing it has one immediate hurdle, which is what the face actually is. Since on the Fantastic Frontier wiki it says that the black parts on his face are actually his mustache. But actually when you take a closer look on the 3D model, you actually notice that the black cubes are coming out from his lower jaw instead of his face. And also when you look at it directly, it looks very uneven. So I'm going to be interpreting these as teeth instead of a mustache. The other part of the face, being the eyes, are a lot more easier to understand. Since his eyes are sticking out, I just made it to where his eyeballs were actually coming out of his sockets. Kind of like some Looney Tune type of stuff. Aside from that, the rest of the model kind of seems very easy to draw, up until you actually start looking at the shoulder pads. Since it's not even like he's wearing like football gear or anything like that, he's like just straight up like shoulder, like animal hide, I guess. So I just drew like a cape and put some clasp on his collar so it was like sticking there. Then the rest of the drawing is pretty straightforward when it comes to translating the actual model design into 2D, with the only main difference being that his pants just have string and actually kind of like wrap around his waist. I also tried to make the string on his pants kind of look like rope, since I feel like that was the most suitable thing for a giant. I also do want to say, out of the 30 drawings I do in this video, this one probably has the most boring pose, since the multiple hands on his actual shoulders are terrifying to actually think of in perspective. So I just decided to do a simple front-facing pose for the blackrock giant. But I think that was the only noteworthy things left for what I was thinking during this drawing. And I think that should do it. I think it came out pretty decent, but I don't think anything too fantastic so far. Anyway, let's get into our second drawing. Now this is the part where it gets a bit challenging, because the next thing we're drawing is going to be the forest guardian. Because as you can see, there really isn't that much to go off of it. It really just has that silverback gorilla type of like build, along with the brown stripes on his left arm, and the tree that he is holding with his right one. But then when you go to his face, it is really hard to make out what it's supposed to be. So I was kind of stumped on what to even do with this character and deciding if I should even draw it in the first place, until I opened up the 3D model of it, turned it to the side, and boom, there it was. Something that slightly resembled a face. So yeah, that's what I'm going with this drawing. A silverback gorilla with a frog head with a tree in his hand. I also want to note that with the colors, I chose it to be very simple. Since the forest guardian is supposed to be a forest guardian, I kind of chose it to be like an earthy type of color palette. So I actually kind of like the idea of the body, eyes, and teeth kind of being a mixture of mud and clay. I also made the tree a little bit short because I didn't want it to go off of the canvas. Also, one more thing to note is that I didn't really know how to interpret the hip joints when it came to the model. So I just said screw it and just gave it a big old butt. But anyway, I think that's all I have to say for this drawing. And that should be it. I think I did pretty good concerning what I was trying to adapt. Personally, I like how the liner came out and also how I was able to fill the canvas with the forest guardian. I wish there were more colors I could have used for this design, but I didn't know how to execute it without it looking off-putting. But I'm still happy how it came out either way. So it's time to get to our last but not least drawing. I'm not gonna lie, this is where I actually lock in. Both the blackrock giant and the forest guardian don't got nothing on what I'm about to do right now, because the last enemy we're going to be doing is the ice knight. Because although it's easy to interpret on what it is, it's probably the hardest to actually execute onto a canvas. And I think that's part of the reason why it came out looking so good, because I was kind of forced to take my time while I was doing this, since the cage-like helmet was probably the hardest thing to do out of all this, coupled with the fact I kind of wanted to make it glare with his eyes, and also the fact I had to convey that his arms were actually hammers instead of it being two giant blue popsicles it had on its sides. Also, I'm not too sure if you noticed by now in this video, but for a majority of these drawings I spent a lot of time on line art, mostly because I want to use the weight of my lines to make the drawing visually appealing. And I felt like doing it here was especially important, since there was a lot of things going on, such as the cage helmet, the hammer swinging, the other hammer, and the ice crystals placed throughout this model. I do want to say that although the sketch and the line art were pretty fun to do, choosing the color palette for this was especially scary because this model has 4 different shades of almost the same color. So I had to make sure that each color was different enough to where it didn't look similar, while also having to shade and also highlight this drawing. And also one more thing I wanted to add is that I made its middle section kind of act like a lower lip, just so the Ice Knight kind of has an emphasis on it having like a mean mug looking face. Anyway, that's all I've got to say for this drawing. And that's going to be it for the final drawing. Honestly, after drawing the Ice Knight, it's personally moved up on how much I actually like the character, because when you actually go in game, you can like barely see it, so I just never realized how cool of a design it actually is. But that's gonna do it for all the drawings in this video. I'm just now realizing how short this video actually is, so I think next time I might just draw a few more characters instead of stopping at 3. Also, thank y'all for the 1K, but most importantly, thank you for watching. See ya.